Hi, I'm Mark and welcome to my channel. On January 7th, I had the pleasure of meeting Fonda Lee, my favorite author, and Shannon Lee, and also Rebecca Roanhorse, my other favorite author. And this was an epic book event, and unfortunately it was cut short by the fires. After knowing what I know now, it's chilling watching the footage, knowing that we were kind of close to the fires. They had to evacuate us, and the book event was cut short, so we weren't able to talk with the authors as much as we'd like. But Fonda Lee did sign my Jade War picture, and it made me super happy because it's hanging up on my wall now, just inspiring me whenever I look at it. So thank you, Fonda Lee, Shannon Lee, and Rebecca Roanhorse, for your kindness. With that, here's the video.
The first thing I would like to know is, how did you meet?
Well, we met because we were introduced, because I had this project where I've been sitting with a lot of my father's creative ideas for a long time. He'd written a number of treatments and some screenplays for different film and TV projects, and they were all very different in terms of like set and setting, but they all were very consistent in theme, which was that they were, undoubtedly about a martial artist on a journey of sort of self-realization. And so I started to sort of imagine that these things could be woven into one world. And so I set about doing that and dreaming up, what might this world be and what might this look like, and writing a treatment, but never having written fiction and being somewhat daunted by the task, I really wanted to collaborate with someone on that. And I was really grateful that my literary agent recommended that I speak with Fonda. And I mean, it was just a match made in heaven. We just hit it off right away. Like, just from a creative standpoint, from a personality standpoint, from an ease of discussion, but also Fonda is just, her background is so amazing. I mean, her work and her skill, and then the fact that she has martial arts in her background, the fact that she knows about my father's seen his movies and all that sort of thing. It just made the dialogue that much easier.
Yeah, so I'm blushing now because when I was growing up, Bruce Lee was such an iconic figure for me, so influential, somebody who, I remember growing up watching on screen, and was such just a pivotal figure for the Asian American community, for me as a martial artist, an inspirational figure, and also just an incredible storyteller, somebody who had all this philosophy and depth. And so I was at a point in my career, I just finished writing Rainbow Saga and was working on kind of the plan for what other projects I was gonna work on. I started off writing young adult fiction, didn't think I would go back to writing it because I didn't have a young adult project in mind. And then my agent said, Shannon Lee wants to get on a call with you. And I was like, okay, which is not the sort of call that you get every day. And so of course I hopped on the call with Shannon and found out that she was a fan of the fantasy genre, which I didn't know, and that she had in mind this idea to weave some of these concepts and these ideas into a fantasy story. And we just, like Shannon said, it felt like this perfect project, perfect match at the perfect time. And then when we started collaborating, Shannon sent me some of the background material, the scripts that her father had written, the treatment that she had written, and I read it and I was like, I can see where we're gonna go with this.
And you had mentioned that you didn't have YA in mind, but I know you have written YA. Zero Boxer and EXO are both YA. Had you conceived of some of these ideas as young adult work? Like, what made the two of you decide to go YA as opposed to writing an adult fantasy novel?
Yeah, I really specifically did want it to be young adult, in particular because I really wanted to try to introduce a new generation of people to my father's thoughts, ideas, philosophies, themes, all those things. And, my father's films, even though they're quite old at this point, they're still around, but they're adult films, and so I find that people sort of, yeah, unless they're martial artists, they do find Bruce Lee, but more when they're older. Maybe as teenagers, but in their 20s and things like that. And so this was really an attempt to lean into telling a story for a slightly younger audience.
Yeah, pretty much exactly that. We really conceived of it as YA from the start. And it was actually a challenge for me to get back into writing YA because I'd been away from it for a while. Like you said, I started off writing young adult, but I felt like I kind of debuted twice because I had my young adult books. But while I was writing those, I was also writing the Greenbone Saga, and that came out and took up like 7+ years of my life. So I didn't have kind of the YA voice fresh in my mind. And when we started working on this project, it was trying to find, one of the pleasant challenges was trying to find that right tone for the book, where it did have that teenage perspective. It had those young characters, could introduce young readers to Bruce Lee, but also had crossover into the adult space, because we know there's going to be a ton of both my readers, fans of Bruce Lee, who would be coming in as adults. So finding that right balance was something that was important to us.
I know I wrote a middle grade, and I found writing for children very challenging. It's sort of like a whole different vibe, because children come to a book with very little world perspective, and they tend to believe whatever the author tells them, right? They don't have a lot of life experience to compare it to. What did you find most challenging about writing for the YA subset as opposed to writing for adult, especially coming off of Greenbone Saga, which is very adult?
Right. So on one hand, there are certain things that are easier in young adult. They're very, the immediacy of the POV was something I think that is really just a hallmark of young adult, right? Because they are very in themselves. They're very self-absorbed. They don't have a ton of life experience, but they do have a lot of big feelings, right? And so the immediacy of the perspective, I found it, once I got into it, it was very easy because I now have teenage children. When I first started writing young adult, my kids were little. They were 2 and 5 at the time. And now I have kids who are in the age range of the characters that I'm writing. So I had test cases right there. And oh yeah, the daily, the daily trials and tribulations of being a teenager were very forefront of mind. But coming from writing the Greenbone Saga, which was this big, sprawling, multi-POV, adult, epic fantasy, it was a big mind shift because I didn't, your tools are more limited, right? There's not the ability to see more of the world by jumping point of view, having that omniscient, having, the world building for an epic fantasy reader, their expectations are different than for a young adult reader. So you have to be much more economical. And there are times where it's a challenge because I'm I need to give this information to the reader. And I can't kind of just go into another point of view or make this a piece of exposition from an omniscient point of view. I have to still to figure out a way that this teenage character is somehow going to get this information. So in a way, it's freeing, but that freedom also comes with its own set of constraints.
And now, Shannon, I know you have written nonfiction before. So this was your first foray. Well, you wrote a comic book also,
yes.
Collaborated. But this is your first foray into fiction. What was that like? Was that freeing or was that terrifying? A little bit of both.
It's always terrifying to write anything. So, yeah, I would say that for me, I'm still very much, at the beginning of even dipping a toe there, because, I came up with the original concept and the treatment and grabbed different pieces. But I mean, Fonda, we then took, that in our back and forth and really evolved that into something so much more. And Fonda wrote the first drafts, so, which I was really grateful for. And as an aspiring fiction writer, because I do have a project of my own that I would like to write and have been working on a little bit here and there, it was really actually super instructive for me to be able to watch her process, see how she did things, and be able to be a part of the creative process, and then get to come in and add my own little tweaks and things here and there, which I really enjoyed. And so I really loved it. But I really have to tip my hat and bow to Fonda here, because without her, there's I would still be sitting at my desk, probably ripping my hair out, going I don't know what I'm supposed to do now. So
I did that too. That's just writing.
Yeah, no, but it was great, because first there was the comic book, then now there's the collaboration here. I have written some treatments and created some film and TV projects that are in development right now, but I feel like the next big step would be to take the whole thing into my arms. So I don't know, maybe we'll be here again in a couple of years talking about that.
Let's hope so.
I mean, I want to add too, though, that Shannon is underselling herself, because I'm awed by how you've taken your father's legacy and used it to generate so much cool creative threads in different directions, right? Not just, obviously our project together, and then also the comic books and all that, and Warrior, and there's just all these, and they're all cohesive, right? They all have the stamp of Bruce Lee, but they're such different projects, and they've gone in different directions, and together they kind of create this body of work. So it's just really cool. But I did feel having this collaboration was it was just really, it was fun and cool to be it felt like, the spirit of his philosophy, his presence was kind of on the page, which is just, I've been joking for a few years, I get to write Bruce Lee fan fiction for a living. It's a kind of a cool job.
Came true. We gotta put it out there. So, you talked a little bit about what your process was like, that Fonda wrote first drafts, and then you gave notes, and you sort of collaborated. Is there any more to the process that you could share? I would love to know, how did you handle disagreements? Did you ever have disagreements about how something should be executed on the page? What did that look like? And if you could do it over again, are there any things in the process of working together that you would change?
Well, we are both martial artists,
right.
so
we
just
cage fought.
Yeah, we just cage fought.
Excellent. That is the best collaborative experience.
I would have to say, I would say there were never any major disagreements. There were discussions where, we thought, I would say, well, I feel like this might be better. Or Fonda would say, oh, I don't know, I kind of feel like it should be this. And we would just talk it through until we got to the elegant solution, And I have to say, it was a pretty seamless, or at least I feel it was a pretty seamless interaction in that way. I always want to be as open as I can to another person's ideas, because and I've had the benefit of working in film and TV where there's a lot of collaboration, a lot of voices in the room, and you sometimes you have to learn the lesson of sort of letting go, because you're like, no, but this is how I was seeing it, and then somebody else, and then it starts to go off in another direction. You're like, oh, okay. But usually, if the ingredients are right, it ends up for the better, and in this instance, I think it absolutely did.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think one thing that was more important in the collaborative process was more upfront planning. So sometimes it's like, when I'm writing on my own projects, I don't know where I'm going with this, I'm just gonna write into the wilderness. But like, when you've got someone else to bounce ideas off of, you want to make sure that you both are on the same page in terms of where the story is going. So right now we're working on book 2, and I've written I think that process of like planning book 2 is the most in-depth that I've been through planning a book before, because I knew this was like the finale of the duology. We wanted to make sure all the emotional beats were hitting. So, we really dug into a detailed outline. And so in a way, I think the front end and the back end are more intense with the collaboration, because you've got to do more upfront syncing up, and then in my case, I felt like write quickly so I could get stuff to Shannon so she could react to it, revise it, and give notes. And then that back end of like additional iterations is also more. So while it's like maybe in a project I was doing myself, it'd be like this long, ponderous first draft process. It would be more upfront loaded, and then faster draft, and then more revision time.
Great. So I love the behind the scenes look at how the book got made. Let's talk a little bit about the book. And we won't tell you a lot about the book because I don't want to spoil it. So no spoilers. We won't tell you how it ends. I know how it is. But and it is a duology, so just there might be a little bit of a cliffhanger. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Tell me a bit about the book and the 2 main characters, or I feel are the 2 main characters.
I mean, so the idea for the book was always that it would be set in a culturally Asian world where dragon is sort of the symbol for, God or the supreme being or what have you, and that this world was one that had become divided over time between East and West and separated by this wall. And so we have this main character by the name of Jun, who suffers in the very beginning. It's right in the prologue, so it's not a giveaway or anything like that. This huge trauma where he's separated from his family. He and his father are separated from his mother and his twin. And it then becomes sort of this journey to sort of, I'm like, I don't want to say anything that's going to give it away.
It's hard, right? Yeah. You can be super vague. He goes on a journey.
There's a big tournament.
There's lots of martial arts involved. But he's really on a search. He probably wouldn't put it in his terms, but on a search to sort of he's propelled forward in life, as we all are, through our traumas and our wounds, right? And so there's something he has to prove to himself. There's some sort of salve that he's trying to apply to what's happened in his life by being this really awesome, accomplished martial artist against all odds.
If I were to put it in kind of more blunt structural terms, it's a tournament arc. Mm-hmm. And it's if the first book is Enter the Dragon, the second one is Game of Death, because they're like this. The first book revolves around a tournament. The second book, there's going to be a giant pagoda, and of course you got to fight your way through the tournament and up the giant pagoda. But of course, there's a whole bunch of other stuff that happens. The main character, John, thinks that, you know, his ultimate goal in life is to win this tournament. If you win the tournament, you become the guardian of the scroll. The scroll is this mystical item that is sort of the source of knowledge and wisdom from dragon and like the sacred text of this world. And along the way, all sorts of things happen that he realizes there's a lot more going on, and this tournament has much higher stakes than even he anticipated. And there are some side characters, his frenemy, potential love interest, and I forgot to mention that this world, there's certain people who are born with enhanced abilities. So they have they're born breath marked, hence the name of the duology. But they have a patch of dragon scales somewhere on their body, and that means that there's some gift that they have that can give them some unseen advantages. And Jun is not one of those people. So he has a big chip on his shoulder because his twin does, he doesn't, and it's been a constant source of insecurity and aggravation for him.
Okay, so you anticipated my next 3 questions. Very good.
All
very
right.
good. So this is a magic world, and you just told us what the magic system looks like, and that John actually does not have magic. When we first meet him, and it's in the prologues, like you said, I'm not giving anything away. How do you say this? He's 6 years old.
Yeah.
And he is a pain in the ass. I think that's fair to say. Like, he is a very accurate 6-year-old. And he does something, he is the cause of his family being torn apart. And then he has to live with that trauma. And like you said, that sort of propels him forward and determines the rest of his life. I don't really have a question there. That's more of a comment. But I thought that was very, I was like, because I think at first when I read him, I was like, oh, I don't know about this kid. Like, I'm not liking him. But then you go, wow, that is a lot to live with. That is like a big burden for him to carry, that he's responsible for that. So just, high marks on your characters. That's all. So it's very much a coming of age story. Like you said, we'll sort of see where he goes from there and what he learns. And so Shannon, I wanted to ask you a little bit about how you see your father's teachings manifesting in John's arc and his journey. And are there specific things that maybe you could call out a little bit, but I don't want you to give anything away. So what you feel comfortable with.
I mean, for sure, it was a big part of writing this book that we wanted to make sure that we wove in not just Easter eggs, but also some teachings, some ideas of his that were important to him. He was always on a journey of self-actualization. I think that's a big theme in the book. The main character has a lot of similarities to my father. My father, just talking of annoying 6-year-olds, had the nickname as a young child of Mo Sitting, which means never sit still. And he was a scrapper as a kid, and he was always getting into trouble, and he wanted to prove himself, and he wanted to be the best. And so there are a lot of themes, in a sense, biographically, but then also through what he has to learn in order to broaden his perspective and his skill is really steeped in the philosophy and teachings of my father.
I did wonder, I have a question. One of the things, of course, as we mentioned, John does not have this magic ability, but I think he's, sort of learns again and again that magic isn't enough. Like, that is not the cure-all. He thinks if only I were breath marked, I could be the greatest warrior in the world. But what he sort of learns is, no, it's hard work. It's like the blood, sweat, and tears that you put into it. It's all these sorts of things. Is that part of your father's philosophy?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, a lot of people, it's really easy to see him on screen and be like, oh, well, I mean, he's just insanely talented. He's coordinated. He's physically gifted. But he worked so hard. And he was kind of a sickly kid. He had terrible eyesight. His body was not proportionate when he was young and all of that stuff. And he put in the time and he put in the effort. And more important than that, it's also about having, in a way, the appropriate magical thinking. so that, because my father talked all the time about if you can shift your perspective, if you can shift the way you think about something, then you can change your whole world. And so I think that that is also something that's very prevalent in his arc.
So this book is chock full of incredible martial arts. So many fight scenes, so many cool fight scenes with so much good detail. I know you were both actual martial artists. And I'd like to know how, as a person who writes fight scenes, but I can't write what you guys write. I was like, my fights are like limited to like this one time in 6th grade where I pulled this girl's hair. I don't think that counts. So how did you take your real life experience of being martial artists and translate that to the page in a way that was narratively exciting? And it's not just like, I did this or I did that. Like, how do you do that? How do you write a good fight scene?
Well, for me, writing fight scenes feels like the dessert of writing. It's always been like the candy because I enjoy doing it. I always like writing a good fight scene. Just as someone who enjoys reading and watching good fight scenes, and of course having that martial arts background, I feel like when I write a fight scene, I do see it just play out in my head. To me, it is like a movie scene that happens, and I'm transcribing the movie scene. And I can get through a lot of other scenes being like, okay, there's a fight scene coming up. like right through this tense emotional confrontation, there's going to be fights. And I think, though, that one thing to keep in mind, especially for people who are writing, who don't have that martial arts background, is it's not about like the moves. It's not about like this kick and this punch. Like the actual technical descriptions of what is happening are very secondary to the interiority and the emotional stakes that are at play. So a good fight scene is very much like a good dialogue scene. It's also very much like a good sex scene, because what you want to evoke in those scenes is you're having two characters in a really intense emotional confrontation, and you have to make sure that when the reader goes into those scenes that you set up what's at stake for the character, and that you follow up that scene with resonant consequences. And the actual physical blocking itself, I often find I write very quickly, but then I spend a lot of time smoothing it out. So like ideally when you read the scene, you don't notice the words and it goes quickly, but it takes time to make the prose work for you so that you just have enough detail that the reader can fill in the rest in their own mind. And if the scene feels fast-paced because you've spent a lot of time making it move very smoothly in language.
So there's a craft to it. Is that what you're saying?
I guess
For
that's
sure.
what I'm saying.
And she's very good at it. Yeah, and I would just say that it's very much like my father and his films. I think my father's films were also a big cue to how we wanted the martial arts to come across. And because he didn't like just violence for violence sake. In his movies, it's never just like, and fight, and then story, and then fight. It's exactly as Fonda is describing, which is what are the emotional stakes for the character, and what are they trying to express through this fight and this challenge, and what they're coming up against that is really driving it. And then, you know, for us, even though this is a world that has magic in it, we wanted to make sure that it had a very grounded sense of realism to the action and to the characters and to the world as well. Because again, you know, it has to sort of fit in the canon of Bruce Lee. And so that was what he wanted to do. He didn't love those movies of his day that were like, you know, fantasy swordplay movies where the characters are flying through the air and battling each other, because he was a real martial artist. So he wanted to express the power and the efficiency and the speed of martial arts in a real way on film. And so we wanted to also bring that sense to the action.
I think you did. It's very, very good. I love that stuff. Okay, I'm gonna just check my time because we want to leave some time for Q&A. I think we're good. Let's do 10 more minutes, and then I'll open up the floor for Q&A. So think of any questions you might have. So let's see. What do I want to ask? Oh, okay. I want to shift gears just a little bit and talk about gangsters. So I want to talk about Greenbone Saga and I want to talk about Warrior. So, Fonda, you are the author of the Greenbone Saga, as we know, which includes 3 novels and then The Jade Sitter of Jandaloon, right? And Shards. Tell us a little bit about that world. Have most people read parts of the Greenbone Saga? Because you need to read Jade City. Excellent, excellent. Talking about hot sex scenes. But tell us a little bit about the Greenbone Saga.
Yeah, so the Greenbone Saga is Asian-inspired epic urban fantasy gangster family saga. I never get those words out in the same order twice. But it is set in a secondary world where there is a rare substance, jade, which confers enhanced abilities to those who are able to wear it and harness it. And these abilities might remind you of some of your favorite kung fu movies where the practitioners are able to leap off tall buildings or have enhanced strength or be able to like sense other people's life presence in the room. And really the story at its core is it's a family saga. So it's the first book especially takes cues from The Godfather because it's about these 2 clans that essentially rule this island where jade is found. It's the only place jade is found, and there is there's changes coming to this world because there's a drug that's introduced that allows people who have not traditionally been able to wear jade to start wearing jade, and clan war breaks out, and all sorts of things happen. But it becomes over the course of the series an intergenerational family saga, and so family was really at the heart of the story. It revolves around really 4 siblings, and really then their families struggle to survive against its enemies. And it sucked up a lot of years of my life.
So I have a question. As an author, I just have to ask you some of the names of like the clans, the Peak and the No Peak and the Weathermen and all these like really cool things. How did you come up with those? Like, where did that come from?
So I just love naming things. It's like one of the funnest parts of writing fantasy. I like making up names. It's great. But I especially love coming up with the names that give a fictional world a sense of realism, of verisimilitude, of like, oh, I feel like I could get on a plane and go to this place and go to this restaurant and order what's on the menu. And so naming all the streets, the luxury cars, the neighborhoods, the titles of different people of status in the clan, all of that is just, it's so much fun for me. So a lot of it involves really just like brainstorming. I'll literally have my notebook and come up with all sorts of ideas for like, I'll look up, I'll Google search all the names of luxury cars and make the algorithms think that for some reason I'm in the market for luxury cars that I will never be able to afford. And to kind of get a like sense of what feels right, and then I'll brainstorm stuff. So the titles of the clan members, for example, I took a lot of inspiration from triad titles because they have these very flowery titles, like, you know, Dragon Head and Sandal Master, and like what, you know, these sort of evocative titles. So I wanted to infuse the clan names titles with that sort of thing, and so I would brainstorm things like, okay, well, what would the leader of this clan be? Okay, something that feels very like very stable, very strong, very like central, right? And that's how the pillar came about. And the strategist would be someone who had a sense of foresight, who was someone who knew what others didn't, you know. So and hence they came up weatherman and horn. Someone who's evoked a sense of of strength, of kind of military feeling to it. So that's what I do for literally everything. And yeah, I think what I ended up doing at the end of it all, after I wrote the Green Boat song, was I wrote the travel guide to John Lynn, because it was just fun for me to imagine, okay, now I have a list of all the restaurants, all the places that you would visit if you went to this place.
I love Weatherman. I would steal that in a hot second. So if it shows up in one of our books, no, I stole it from Fonda. So I wanted to ask you, Shannon, a little bit about Warrior. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so Warrior is a TV series, 3 seasons. You can watch it on Max and or Netflix. It is based on a treatment that my father wrote that takes place historically in the late 19th century, in the lead up to the Chinese Exclusion Act and during the historical time of the Tong Wars in San Francisco. So it's a fictional story, but that takes place in a historically accurate time, where you have this world where there are the different Tongs, which are these different associations within Chinatown that are all vying for control and different levels of power. And so you have that conflict going on, and then you also have the Chinese labor of the time versus the Irish labor and the disputes there. You have the industrialists who like the Chinese labor because they're less expensive, and then you have the politicians who are trying to get rid of the Chinese labor and kick them out of the country. And in the midst of all of that, you have Assam, the warrior, who shows up and gets off the boat from China looking for, again, you find this out at the end of the first episode, so you're not really spoiling anything, but he's looking for someone in Chinatown, and in the process gets indoctrinated into this whole world and has to fight his way through it and decide, is he a gangster or is he a warrior?
I just have to say, I absolutely loved it. And I love, this just feels like this, it's such a rich, historical time period, and, no one was writing anything in it. What are we even doing? Just keep telling the same gangster stories over and over, and here you have, San Francisco, right for the Exclusion Act, just really, really rich. Anyway, love it. You guys should check it out. Okay, so let's shift gears. Do I have time for questions?
Actually, I'm so sorry. We are going to go straight to the signing.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, it's actually due to the LA winds and fire situation. Our manager wants us to close the store just a little bit early to make sure we're fine right now, but they just want to make sure everyone is safe and gets home smoothly. Road conditions are too windy.
Yes. This whole
We're stuck here forever all
is
together.
kindling, really. So
No, actually we have 3 hours.
No, we're good right now, but they just want to make sure road conditions aren't too difficult for people driving home, especially anybody heading west. So, but we want to make sure everyone gets a signed copy and gets a quick moment with y'all. So, I think just for the sake of that, we're gonna just move straight to the signing, if that's all right.
Okay.
Yeah. Sorry. We have to do some Q&A, but want to make sure everybody at least gets a signed copy and gets them up with you guys. Yeah.
Thank you so much, you guys, for the conversation. Very, very cool. Thank you, everyone, for coming. Thank you, Rebecca. My pleasure.
Thanks for being here, everyone. Yeah.
Despite the fire.
Despite conditions, so nice.
Braving storm and fire, natural disasters.
We're gonna line up right here along the back history wall. So we're gonna have them sign at the back info desk, and everybody can just start lining up here. My colleague is gonna come through and get everybody's how you're gonna want the signing personalized, and you'll just let them know the name, and then we'll get started.
All right. If you watched to the end, thank you for watching. Like I said, it's really chilling knowing what we know now. We are super lucky to be nowhere near the fires, but we had to evacuate anyways just for safety precautions. I just feel really bad for everyone involved with the fires and how it affected so many lives. I hope everyone can rebuild from the ashes better than before. Also, rest in peace to David Lynch. he was battling emphysema, and I was happy to find out he evacuated the fires, but he just passed away today. And I just have a feeling that the fires agitated his lungs, and he passed away probably because of them. So I just wish that he was able to. I just wish he was still here with us, because he's my favorite director, and at least we have the movies that we have now. He helped me through the pandemic with his weather reports, his daily weather reports. I'd wake up at 6 a.m. to see them, and he'd always be there like clockwork.
Good morning. It's December 2, 2022, and if you can believe it, it's a Friday once again. Here in LA, a rainy, cloudy morning, a pretty good breeze blowing, 52 degrees Fahrenheit, around 11 Celsius. Today I was thinking about the Ronettes and their song, Be My Baby, from the year 1963. This afternoon, it's going to be going up to 61 degrees Fahrenheit. That's around 16 Celsius. And it looks like this rain is going to taper off for sure by mid-morning. And after that, clouds all along the way. Everyone, have a great day. Good morning. It's July 2, 2022, and it's a Saturday. Here in LA, a sunny morning, very still right now, 63 degrees Fahrenheit, around 17 Celsius. Day 1 of weekend projects, and the fun work train is rolling. Don't forget, there are now 7 dining cars and 3 observation cars for your enjoyment. This afternoon, it's going to be going up to 79 degrees Fahrenheit. That's about 26 Celsius. And it looks like there may be a few clouds floating about till mid-morning, but after that, for sure, beautiful blue skies and golden sunshine all along the way. Everyone, have a great day.
So thank you so much for being a source of light, and also for your teachings of meditation. At least him and Angela will be making beautiful music in heaven together. And with that, I'd like to say goodbye. Bye.